Welcome back to Self Love and Sweat the podcast. Today we're talking about setting your goals for next year. This coming up year at the time of recording this is 2023. So setting up your goals. And this is not a New Year's resolution. These are not SMART goals. This is a practice I do every single year and coach all my one-on-one clients to do this. I've made videos and content on this in the past. And a friend of mine, actually, Mike, he's been on the podcast a bunch, former hockey player. Now he's a real estate agent now in Canada. And he made an Instagram story the other day and tagged me in it, talking about how he was getting ready for 2023 by doing his word of the year. And that was something that he and I had talked about before and had shared with one another. He's one of those friends that were just like always in each other's corner and very like growth mindset oriented. And yeah, he is always posting some great stuff on social media. And so he kind of was like, it was kind of like a tag your it moment when I initially thought about it. Probably like end of November, he posted about it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is, something I usually do towards the end of the year, getting into early new year. But I was really like, no, I want to spend about a month thinking about this. And I want to really, dig into other avenues of my life and of growth. And I want to choose wisely. Not that I wasn't choosing wisely before. My words this year were relax and learn. I chose two words. And actually this year I chose two words as well, but kind of as a combo word versus two separate words like I had in 2022 of this year. So I just, relax and learn were my words of 2022. And that for me was a reminder to relax, right? Like chill. Maybe you've been following me for a while. Maybe you've listened to this podcast before. Maybe you know me in real life, but the chill button is a button that is a little dusty and rusty on my end. I just am always wanting to go, 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 do. And that's something I've just really been working on, tuning into the messages that you get when you're not doing much, when you're relaxing, when you're working in, when you're doing more restorative practices. And so I found that you can get, and I continue to kind of do this dance, let's say, if you will, of, go hard in the paint and then like just like breathe hard in the paint, if that makes sense, like this workout and work in kind of dance. And I think that what's most important, at least in my life, is that we make it a dance and not tug of war, right? So relax and learn, my words for 2022. Relax, like I said, reminding me to chill and relax and learn. Learn proactively in terms of like reading books, taking courses. I got my breathwork practitioner certification this year. So that for me was learning. And then also being able to learn in the moment from a particular situation, or maybe in retrospect from particular situations, because I feel like, oftentimes we find ourselves in distress over certain situations. And I think when we can learn from them, that makes them mean something and make them contribute to our next better decisions. And so in that sense, that was relax and learn for me in 2022. So did you set a word for 2022? Do you do something like this? Is this a practice that you do? I just feel like this is so much better than New Year's resolutions, because New Year's resolutions are focusing on just one thing. Like, I want to reach this particular goal. And oftentimes it's very ambiguous. And I feel like focusing on one particular goal, I get it, right? You're more narrow focused on one particular thing. And at the same time, it's like for a whole year, no wonder people stop or forget about it after, 2 weeks or whatever. I feel like a word of the year allows us to bring that word of the year with us everywhere. It allows us to be like, okay, how would relax and learn, for example, show up, today in the grocery store, in my romantic relationships, in my friendships, as a daughter, as a business owner. It's like you get to ask yourself and check in with that word of the year regularly, and it gets to show up in different ways in your life regularly, instead of just focusing on one particular New Year's resolution that just becomes like, a thought of the past. This word of the year can really be integrated into all areas of your life. And that's the whole point, right? So, word for 2023. What do you have? Anything come to mind? I think it's nice sometimes just to write down a bunch of words, words that remind you of how you want to continue to show up, and words that kind of push your limits a little bit and kind of get you to be a little bit uncomfortable and get out of your comfort zone, or lean into an area that just might be a little bit sticky and uncomfortable. And so maybe there's something that you're leaning into. Maybe there's a word that's just been coming up for you. I think sometimes when we start to think about this, and of course, feel free to think about this, but as we start to think about it, different words might come to mind, or you might see a sign that says something, or someone might be like, hey, you're so, I don't know, blank. And you're like, oh yeah, thanks for seeing that in me. And I see that in me too. And I want to bring more of that into my life. And yeah, you might hear like a word, like in conversation, or like I said, you might see it on a sign or be reading a book, or just it might come to you on a walk or something like that. So maybe there's something that comes directly to mind. And as you're thinking about it, kind of what the universe will do is kind of give you signs and signals and synchronicities and things to help you get to that word. And I find that always kind of a fun process where I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to pick a word. I know I'm going to make my word of the year, but I don't really know exactly what it is yet. But I'm just going to think about how that might feel. I'm going to think about, ways and areas of my life that I've shown up as that. Or like I said, words where I'm like, oh yeah, in those particular situations this year that were really challenging, if I could go back, would have shown up more as X, Y, or Z. So now I want to bring that word into my word of the year. So then next time I can be reminded to show up that way, right? So it's like a little nudge in the right direction, and then like a little cheers for yourself for like doing the thing and showing up as the person that you want to be. And so for me, I actually have my journal out in front of me, and I like to put pen to paper. I don't know how you guys feel. I'll brainstorm on notes, like the notes on my phone. But overall, I just really like to put pen to paper. And so I know what my word of the year is, but I wanted to open up to that page on my journal. So anyways, my word of 2023 this year is growth. Growth. And then I have I have growth written, and then I have two lines coming off to the side. So kind of subdividing the word growth into two categories. I have that maturity and security. So growth and maturity, and growth and security. And actually my word is grateful growth. So I really wanted to bring gratitude into my word of the year. I really love Steve Harvey. He's like my favorite famous person of all time. And he did a really great video. He does a bunch of really great videos on Reels and stuff like that, but he did one on gratitude. And I think it was something about gratitude being a currency, and just about how, he even found himself among being, one of the richest guys. He's on TV 7 days a week, just not being grateful and just being super ungrateful. And he had to check himself and be like, no, I want to choose to be grateful daily. And so I watched that video a few months ago, and it's one that I go back to regularly. I have it saved on my Instagram, and I go back and watch it regularly. So when I was making my word of the year, at first I was like, okay, maybe I'll pick two: gratitude and growth. But then at one point I was just thinking about it and writing and just just spending some time, with it energetically and thinking about it. And I was like, maybe grateful growth. Because what I know about myself, and maybe you're the same way too, is that sometimes there's growth, but then I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't, enough. Or, you should have done better. Or I don't take the time to even celebrate the growth. So for me, the reminder in 2023 is that growth, and is that grateful growth. And then the two subcategories, like I said, are maturity and security. So grateful growth in maturity. And I wrote here, in relationships, emotionally. And I wrote hashtags. My friend Steph, who I love so much, I met her through working at Adidas Rentastic, and she's a dear friend of mine, but her and I will often communicate with ourselves in hashtags. So her and I will just throw out some funny hashtags when we're working through something. And so I have here hashtag no red carpet, hashtag I'm the problem, hashtag I'm the solution, hashtag I'm surrounded by growth. So for me, the hashtag no red carpet, and then it kind of escalated with some of these other hashtags here, but it's just like little quick and easy, funny tools to remind me of like, oh yeah, the maturity, the grateful growth in that area of maturity is reminding myself that like no one's going to roll out the red carpet for me. Nobody's going to do the work. Nobody's going to do the rest, right? Nobody's going to do the workouts. No one's going to do the work ins for me. Quite frankly, I don't deserve anything, right? If I'm not grateful for it, why should I be given, more? Right. So that's how I feel in that maturity section. And then security is for me, like kind of the opposite of being insecure, being more secure in who I am as a woman, as a life coach, and just as a person in general. I think we all deal with insecurities at times. So this secure reminds me of that. And then also a grateful growth when it comes to financial security and increasing my income and being able to do more of what I love and make a bigger impact financially. And so those are the two areas that I want to focus on. And so it's not simply, like I said, picking a word like abundant or grateful and like, yeah, woo. It's like, okay, and what does that mean? And what is that going to look like in real life? And have you spent time thinking about, okay, what is this word? Like I broke it up into two categories. I've been working on this with my one-on-one clients as well. And we'll make like a web where it's like, okay, this is the word or group of words that I want to bring into my life and into my world and into my impact this year. And then I'll make it like a web. So then there's little, little, lines with circles around. So you have this kind of like spider web-ish kind of chart, kind of visual representation, and then being like, okay, well, what does that really look like in your life? Okay, if you're going to say grateful growth, for example, it might be like making sure that I'm proactively checking my bank account and saving and monitoring things month over month with Jessica, who's my financial wellness coach, who I love. Increasing the security in myself. Journaling has been so helpful. I can't even tell you how much writing has been helpful for myself and for my clients. And it's been such a beacon of self-love just to release that on paper and to get out a lot of things that I didn't realize I was holding on to. And so for me, growth in that secure of who I am kind of area definitely includes journaling, definitely includes regularly like release or cleaning out of the emotional filter, if you will, through journaling. I love that so much. It feels so good. And every morning I just wake up and do my meditation and I just start writing, whether it's a rewrite of a particular story that I'm working on that's been troubling me, if it's just like whatever might come to me, or a journal prompt, or just a continuation of maybe something I was working on, like working on my word of the year and getting out some notes and just putting pen to paper. So that for me has been a very powerful self-love tool that I could not have imagined could have been that for me, but it is. And so that would go on that web for me. No red carpet. It's like reminding me to wake up and do the work. I think it was really challenging after going from working at Adidas Runtastic, having this amazing team, doing a lot of stuff where, like the red carpet was rolled out for us in so many ways. We had so many awesome opportunities. And then when I came back to America, left a lot of what I was doing there, continuing my work in life coaching and podcasting and all of that, there were moments where I was just found myself in like deep frustration because I was like, I want that team back, that teamwork. We were always just, moving forward and, working together and just like making great things happen. And it was just, a moment where I would just find myself frustrated because deep inside, I really missed that. And I really missed that, teamwork. And I still stay connected with a lot of my former coworkers and love them dearly and deeply. But that reminder of the no red carpet is like, hey, like, and what are you going to do? Like mope over what teamwork you used to have before? Are you going to continue to build your leadership skills and grow your team? And that's what I'm doing, right? But sometimes it's frustrating. And I find myself in moments of frustration, just thinking like, I feel like And I know that I'm not, but I do have those moments where it's like I feel like I'm going backwards, and I just have to be like, no one's going to roll out the red carpet for you, London. Um, I'm the problem and I'm the solution. I have that under the maturity section of Grateful Growth as well. And that's really just a reminder of like ownership, um, and not allowing me to get in that trap of waiting for things outside of me to change, or waiting for people to change or circumstances to change in order for me to have that growth. And so yeah, ownership is huge in that web, if you will. So yeah, think deep about your word of the year. Make some subcategories, make that web like I talked about, and include particular situations. It's like, your life, who you're around, who might trigger you, or certain circumstances that might come up. And so write those down, and write them as if you are being that word of the year. You are embodying that word that you say that you want to be. And so that's why I love using this tool, because it goes into all areas of your life. Not just one particular, weight loss goal or health related goal or financial only goal. It's like, okay, yes. And when you have that particular New Year's resolution, for what is that bigger purpose? And maybe through that kind of thought process, you can find your word of the year too. And then I wrote down some like I am statements, some affirmations that go along with how I feel when it comes to grateful growth. And those are I choose to feel good when it's not all good. I've noticed, yeah, situations in my life where I feel good when it's all good. And I am not as proud as how I act and react when it's not all good. And so I choose to feel good when it's not all good. I feel supported and grounded. I know who I am and who I am not. I don't expect anyone or anything to come through for me. I can be alone and feel full. I am a magnet for miracles, and I gratefully accept what is meant for me. And yeah, I think when I read those affirmations, and as you're making your affirmations that represent more of how you want to show up with your word of the year, write things like I said, like I choose to feel good when it's not all good. That is very uplifting and empowering for me, but also a reminder of where I've been and where I don't want to be. Same thing with very supported and grounded. Right now, at the time of recording this podcast, I've been traveling a ton over the last year, between like traveling for pleasure, traveling for work, traveling to support friends in their work, traveling to go see my boyfriend on the East Coast. And yeah, I feel supported and loved in that sense, but I don't feel very like rooted and grounded at the moment. I've been describing myself as more of like a hover board or a ping pong ball. And so, to say that affirmation, I feel very supported and grounded, is definitely an affirmation that I'm on my way to embodying even more, because right now I don't feel that way that much. And there's been a couple things in the last few days where I'm like, okay, yeah, that's really helping me feel more supported and grounded. And so, yeah, I know who I am and who I am not. I don't expect anyone or anything to come through for me. So, like I mentioned, these were areas that I've struggled of being like, oh, I wish I had that teamwork, or I wish I had that momentum that we created. It just kind of felt like I said, I was going backwards or starting from the beginning. But I mean, I totally was in all senses of the word. And there were many times I had to remind myself, like, in order for others to come through for me eventually, I need to be coming through for me. So in this process of feeling like starting over and essentially starting over, starting to come through with myself has to come first. And then other people, as my team grows, it's really awesome because you're like, yes, okay, the more that I focused on how I wanted to show up, the more of what I needed continued to show up in the form of people on my team that I love. So yeah, I can be alone and feel full. That one for me is not a stretch. I love to be alone. I often joke that, like, I don't know, I could go weeks, maybe months without like any human interaction. I don't know if that sounds weird. maybe it does. But for me, I can be alone and feel full. That's like a very true statement for me. And that's something I want to continue to remind myself of is like when I need to be recharged, oftentimes being alone is really what works best for me. So that one kind of resonates a little bit deeper now. But yeah, so I guess one more thing I would want to share because I have it right next, like this next page is in my journal. And to the point that I wrote for my I am statement, I said, I know who I am and who I am not. And so with that, I have a list of 8 core values. And I won't go into all of them or a ton of detail now on how to set these up for you. But um, what I will say is I think you can think about core values, right? Like how you want to show up in the world, the values that represent, who you are, right? And I think sometimes we forget that or we realize we are following somebody else's values or values that we learned when we were a kid and just like thought they were like the way everything was. And we realize, hey, like actually I can set up the rules to my game and I can say and declare who I want to be and what my core values are and what that looks like in my life. And so I do this always, of course, for myself and with my one-on-one clients too, because it's just a powerful tool to come back to remind you of who you are and who you are not, and maybe areas you want to continue to grow or areas you want to set boundaries. And so making a list of words that describe how you want to show up that also have examples. So I'll give you some examples of mine. One of my core values is cellular courage. And cellular courage for me is intuition plus ancestors. So like those before me, right? Those in my family line, plus surrender. So it's like that internal knowing, that ancestral backing, and then that full surrender of like, I don't know shit and I don't know what's going to happen and I'm here for the ride. That for me is like courage at a cellular level. So that's one of my core values. Considerate. I'm aware of the energy I bring into a space. I remember to regularly look up and pay attention, learn, and see how I can help. Being considerate also really reminds me, to like look up and look up from my phone, right? Oftentimes I'll be walking and doing things and I'll like, not notice a beautiful moment or not notice an opportunity to like hold the door open for someone or that someone's like, trying to walk next to me and I'm like on my phone in la la land. And I just feel like that word considerate reminds me of who I am and who I'm not and how I want to show up and just being aware of that. So core values I think are a powerful tool to get clear. Like I have the core values and then I've spent time writing some bullet points underneath of like, okay, what does that look like in my life? How am I going to know when cellular courage is present? And I wrote there, like, I am not afraid to do what it takes to run my business. I am not afraid to walk away from relationships. And so that's way that, cellular courage shows up regularly. Maybe you listening are an entrepreneur or own your own business or are in a position of leadership where sometimes there's feelings of like, oh, can I do this? Or how the hell am I going to do this? And so channeling into that cellular courage is really helpful. So those core values are helpful in the sense of what I wrote before, where it says, I know who I am and I know who I am not. And I think we might all have a sense, right, of like what we might be on board with and what we might not be. But when we put it down to paper and we say, hey, this is my word of the year, this is how I want to show up. And then here are my core values. So as I'm navigating and setting boundaries and just like doing life, I can be like, hey, is this in alignment with my core values? And I feel like that's helpful for me to make better, more sound decisions. And then also, to be able to be like, hey, let me get back to you. Let me think about it. And it's not just like thinking about it. It's literally like being like, okay, I'm consulting my core values. I'm looking at the rules and the ways that I say I want to show up. And I'm like, is this a yay or a nay? This is all the way in, or we just, not, if this is not fitting and this is not working. And the cool thing about core values is when we put them down and declare them and make them there and like living and breathing, we can think about previous moments in our lives where it's like, oh yeah, no wonder that felt so incongruent because yeah, it was totally not in alignment with these values. And now that I have them like written on paper and like brought them to life, it just makes so much sense as to why that was like a total miss or a total flop, or it just didn't feel right in your gut or something like that. So yeah, 2023. Let's make it, I think, who was I talking to? I can't even remember, where they said, like, I don't really feel like it's a new year in January. I feel like it's a new year in, I don't know if it was her birthday or it was like September or something. And she's like, that's what I really love, about this time of year. It was like, I think it was September, where she's like, it doesn't feel like a new year in January. It feels like a new year for her in September. And she was just like, that for me is a very renewing, inspiring time. And so, yeah, it can be, in the theme of this particular timing of the release of this podcast episode. And, whatever it can be that you're listening to this when it's released, right? At the end of 2022, you're getting ready for 2023. But if you're listening to this and it's like later on, it's like, who cares? It's never too late. And maybe for you, you're like, yeah, I don't feel like, the new year starts on January 1st. I feel like it starts on, I don't know, July 6th, then go for it, right? So whenever you're listening to this, it's never too late to decide how you want to show up and what your core values are and what words describe how you want to be in all areas of your life. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And I think when you get to choose the way you want to do that one thing and show up, in integrity there, I think it's really powerful. So feel free to send me a DM. Mostly on Instagram is where you'll probably get me the quickest, at Life Like Lunden. And just send me a DM there and just be like, hey, this is my word of the year. I listened to this episode. Here's how I want to show up. Here are some of my subcategories or ways I know I'll be showing up as my core values, as my word of the year. The more detailed you get, the better. I feel like putting that down on paper and just really saying who you want to be and what that looks like, and then going in and being that. Yeah, I feel like that's really like living life fully. So send me a DM, share your words of the year with me. Thank you for listening, and love you lots. Bye.